Hello and welcome to marketing91.com. Causes of inflation are increase in money supply, deficit financing, credit creation, increase in exports, repayment of public debt, black money, increase in profit margins, and increase in wages and material cost. Effects of inflation are investment and production. In less than full employment economy, inflation stimulates investment, which in turn results in more production. After the economy reaches full employment, inflation turns into running inflation and, if uncontrolled, into hyperinflation. Next is effects on distribution. Inflation has the effect of redistributing income because prices of all factors do not rise in the same proportion. Entrepreneurs stand to gain more than wage earners of fixed income groups. Speculators, hoarders, black marketers, and smugglers stand to gain on account of windfall profits. Debtors and creditors. Debtors borrow from creditors to repay the principal as well as interest to the latter at some future date. In an inflationary environment, when the real value of money goes down, debtors pay back less in real terms than what they had borrowed and thus stand to gain in their position. Let's look at an example of how inflation favors a debtor over a lender. Assume that every year the value of the rupee decreases by half. Mr. X borrows rupee 1 from Mr. Y with the promise of repaying it in 5 years. Mr. X then buys a liter of milk with the borrowed money. At the time of repayment, the same rupee 1 will buy 1/10 liter of milk. Thus, by borrowing debt, Mr. X was able to acquire a much larger amount of value due to inflation. Next is farmers. Farmers gain during inflation as the prices of farm products rise and the cost incurred by them, such as interest and taxes, either remain constant or do not increase to a large extent. Farmers may be able to pay off their old debts because they receive high prices for their products owing to inflation. Moreover, farmers are generally debtors and have to pay less in real terms, whereas land revenue and taxes are not very high. Fixed income group. The middle class is usually the most affected by inflation because they receive fixed incomes. Individuals live on past savings, fixed interest or rent, pensioners, government employees, teachers, etc. tend to purchase lower amounts of goods and services compared to that in a non-inflationary environment. Social and political disturbances. Inflation increases the inequality of income and widens the gap between haves and have-nots. It leads to corruption, black marketing, smuggling, and other social and moral evils. Social tensions lead to political and administrative problems. Employment. An inverse relationship can be established between inflation and unemployment. If the economy wants a very stable price level, it should be prepared to accept a higher percentage of unemployment. Conversely, for a low rate of unemployment, a higher level of inflation must be tolerated. The last effect is decline in real income. During hyperinflation, there is a drastic decline in the real income or purchasing power of money. At such times, it is said that people carry currency to the market in baskets and return with goods in their pockets. For example, inflation in Zimbabwe in 2008. In 2008 in Zimbabwe, a single egg cost more than $1 billion Zimbabwean dollars. There are 3 measures to control inflation as listed below. Monetary measures, which include quantitative measures and qualitative measures. Fiscal measures and admin measures. Let's understand each of these in detail. Monetary measures aim at reducing money incomes. For controlling the money supply, the central bank may adjust quantitative and qualitative factors. Quantitative measures include bank rate, open market operations or OMO, variable reserve ratio. Other measures such as repo rate and liquidity adjustment facility or LAF. Qualitative measures are margin requirements, consumer credit control, rationing of credit, and directives. Let's start with quantitative measures. The first is bank rate. It is the rate at which the central bank lends money to member banks. An increase in bank rates discourages borrowings, leading to an increase in supply. Next is open market operations, or OMO. The central bank sells or purchases government securities in the market. These buy or sell operations are known as open market because anyone can participate in them. The central bank reduces the quantity of money in circulation by selling securities and increases the quantity in circulation by purchasing the securities. Next is variable reserve ratio. It has two components: cash reserve ratio (CRR) and statutory liquidity ratio or SLR. An increase in these ratios reduces the ability to create credit and vice versa. Some additional quantitative measures introduced by central banks include repo rate and LAF. Qualitative measures are margin requirements. It is the proportion of the value of a security against which a loan is not offered. The higher the margin, the smaller will be the size of the loan sanctioned. Next is consumer credit control. This refers to the issue rules regarding down payments and maximum maturities of installment credit for the purchase of goods. Next is rationing of credit. Credit is rationed by the central bank by limiting the amount available with each commercial bank. For certain purposes, the upper limit of credit is fixed and banks are asked to stick to this limit. This helps in lowering banks' credit exposure to unwanted sectors. The last measure is directives. The central bank issues frequent directives to commercial banks which guide them in framing their lending policy. The RBI issues directives to commercial banks for not lending loans to speculative sectors such as securities beyond a certain limit. Fiscal measures include direct and indirect taxes. These are levied to reduce the disposable income of people. Public borrowing can be undertaken to reduce the quantity of money with the public. It is a costly measure because the government must pay interest on public loans. Compulsory saving or any other forced saving scheme such as Provident Fund issued to reduce excess demand because such schemes help reduce the current use of the money saved. And lastly, public expenditure must be reduced during inflation to reduce money supply in the economy. The last type is direct or administrative measures. Direct measures. The government may impose price control or a price ceiling, especially in the case of essential commodities. The supply of essential consumer goods may be undertaken through the Public Distribution System or PDS. Measures to control or freeze wages, profits and dividends may be introduced. Increase in supply. The supply of goods and services can be increased by improving infrastructure, providing incentives and effectively implementing measures that help increase production. Indexation. To compensate for inflation, a method of indexation of income should be introduced for the fixed income group. Under this system, payments received by the fixed income group can be increased to the extent of the rate of inflation such that their real income remains the same. Thank you.